So we're going to be talking about the context and the purpose. What is our background of the problem? The first one is significant disparities in education, healthcare, and infrastructure persist in eastern Indonesia, despite national commitments to equitable development. The second one, inequalities extend beyond income to essential service, causing multidimensional disadvantages. And then decentralization shifted public service delivery to local government, but improvements remain uneven. And then the challenges include limited institutional capacity, weak human resources, and bureaucratic inefficiencies. The last one, from our background of the problem, is marginalized and remote population are often left behind, undermining social inclusion and sustainable development. Moving on to our purpose of the study. So, our purpose of this study is to examine the role of local government in fair resources, distribution, and equitable access to public services in eastern Indonesia, and then analyze how governance and administrative practice affect education, healthcare, and infrastructure delivery, and then identify barriers and opportunities to improve service quality, and then provide evidence-based recommendation to strengthen local government capacity and policy interventions. The last one of our purpose of the study is to aim to reduce regionalized disparities and promote inclusive sustainable development.
So, after understanding the background of the problems, here are some questions that appear to get addressed in the end. The first one is, how does the availability and quality of education, healthcare, and infrastructure differ between Eastern Indonesia and other regions? And then the second question is, what are the main factors contributing to the lack of adequate public service facilities and skilled worker in Eastern Indonesia? And then the third one is, how does this inequality affect the daily lives and future opportunities of local communities? And the last question is, what efforts have been made by the government and local community to reduce this gap, and how effective have they been?
Okay, now I'm going to explain two public services in Eastern Indonesia, which is education and health. With education, only minimum access to vocational and higher education, young people are often trapped in low-income, informal labor sectors, contributing to a persistent cycle of poverty in the region. Three key issues that needs to be noted is limited access to education, quality gaps, and equity concerns. While in healthcare, many eastern districts like basic clinics and doctor to patient ratio remains far below national standards. Three key issues that needs to be noted is limited access to healthcare, shortage of medical personnel, and access barriers.
The next part is about infrastructure. Improvements from national projects like Eastern Indonesia National Road Improvement Project for road upgrades in Papua, NTT, and Maluku. Another one is Bright Indonesia for electricity expansion. Even though those national projects are placed, challenges are still being faced. The first one is geographic barriers. Thousands of islands make infrastructure costly and hard to maintain. The second one is uneven utility access. Rural areas still lack clean water, sanitation, and reliable electricity. The third one is funding constraints. Limited budgets delay project completion and maintenance. The next part is about infrastructure.
So now let's move on into causes of inequality. The first one, we have geographic and economic barriers. This is because Indonesia have a very tough terrain and sometimes isolation in our landscape, which makes it difficult to make, vital infrastructure such as transportation, roads, and also basic healthcare. Indonesia, in some rural area, also have a very weak local economy because they still relies on agriculture and forestry, which makes local tax revenue very small. Indonesia also have a very full investment cycle, which makes it more difficult to invest in a good or vital component of infrastructure. Now, we also have government budget and policy issue. This is because of the result of decentralization, which makes it the local government and the fiscal autonomy, sometimes make a poor decision. We also have uneven budget allocation, where national transfers often favor to a already developed region of Indonesia. We also have implementation obstacle because of limited administrative capacity, and we will also have sometimes ineffective spending choice. For example, education outlays, uh, they usually not cut poverty because funds are not well targeted. Okay, so now let's move on to the next causes of inequality which will be bring by Ares.
So, for the last cause of inequality in public service delivery in eastern Indonesia is the shortage of adequate facilities and skilled workers. As we know, in the eastern of Indonesia, there are still many remote areas where it lacks of enough schools, health clinics, and basic infrastructures. And these existing facilities are often too few, poorly maintained, or even lack of equipment. And it makes it hard to attract and retain qualified teachers, doctors, and skilled staffs because of the remote areas and also low salaries, limited career growth, and tough living conditions where it discourages the workers. It results with overcrowded classrooms, high teacher absenteeism, and basic health service only. This shortage keeps eastern regions behind more developed areas such as Java and Sumatra.
Moving on to the impact on local communities. The first is to reduce educational and career opportunities because people would often trap in a low income and informal labor, which contribute to a persistent cycle of poverty. The second is the poor health because of the lack of basic clinics, which lead to untreated illnesses, malnutrition, and so on. The third is migration and brain drain, which people who are already succeeded in that region would most likely move from that region. The fourth is the higher cost of living because elevated costs would then further strain the low income household that already burden. And the last is the low trust in government. Because of the absence of participatory decisions, which lead to the weak relationship between the government and the citizen.
So I'll be presenting the government and community responses to the inequality of public services in Eastern Indonesia. First, talking about the government's efforts. The Indonesian government has introduced various national and local programs to address these inequalities, one of which is the Special Allocation Fund, used to improve infrastructure, education, and healthcare in underdeveloped areas. Next is the Village Fund or Dana Desa. It is used to give local communities the power to manage their own development. And there's also presidential priority programs for Papua and West Papua, which aims to accelerate infrastructure and public services uh, in those areas. But however, they face delays due to geographical and bureaucratic obstacles. The government also sends teachers, doctors, and health workers to remote areas through special programs like Indonesia Mengajar and Nusantara Sehat. On the infrastructure side, large projects like the Trans-Papua Highway aim to reduce isolation and improve access to public services, though the terrain makes the process slow and expensive. But beyond the government, NGOs and local communities play a huge role. NGOs such as Yayasan Wahana Visi Indonesia and Plan International Indonesia help by building schools, providing health services, and supporting children's rights in remote regions. These NGOs often work where government support is limited. In addition, local communities often take the initiative themselves. So, for example, people build basic health posts, run volunteer teaching programs, and organize development projects with their own resources. Interestingly, the most effective solutions usually come from collaborations between governments, NGOs, and local communities. These partnerships combine national support, NGO expertise, and local knowledge to achieve more sustainable development. To conclude, solving inequality in Eastern Indonesia is not just about big projects or government budgets, but a real change happens when communities are involved directly in the process. Collaboration, commitment, and local empowerment are key to building a more just and inclusive Indonesia.
Moving on to the conclusion, despite national programs like DAK, Dana Desa, Indonesia Mengajar, and Nusantara Sehat, Eastern Indonesia still faces unequal access to education, healthcare, and infrastructure due to isolation, weak local capacity, and budget limits. Long-term impact depends on better implementation, consistent funding, and stronger local institutions. NGOs, community efforts, and partnerships are key to bridging those gaps. A fair and well-supported approach is essential for lasting public service development. That is all from our group. Thank you for listening.